Before we get started, hit the comments and tell me where you're watching from and what time it is over there. Whether you're catching sunrise in Nairobi, burning midnight in New York, afternoon in Canada, or evening in France, I want to hear from you. Don't just watch silently, let me know where in the world you are. Now, let's dive into the story. Rain hammered the dusty courtyard of Forward Operating Base Kestrel, turning mud into a slippery trap. Soldiers scurried with rifles and backpacks, faces slick with rain and adrenaline. At the center, a young woman in a white nurse's coat knelt beside a bleeding private, her hands steady, her eyes calm, even as chaos erupted around her. No one questioned her presence, they assumed she was just a nurse. Then came the moment that froze the entire unit. A sudden twist of her sleeve revealed a tattoo snaking from her wrist up to her elbow, the insignia of an elite Special Forces unit, a mark earned by fewer than 100 soldiers worldwide. Whispers rose. Soldiers froze mid-step, rifles slack in their grips. Their mouths opened and closed, searching for words. Commands hung in the air, unspoken. Her gaze never wavered from the wounded man, but the energy around her shifted. The nurse wasn't just a caregiver, she was someone trained to move through hell itself and survive. Faces that had been skeptical, even mocking, now showed a mix of awe and fear. And she knew it, every second, every movement, calculated, controlled. She didn't need to speak. The tattoo alone spoke volumes, a silent warning. Underestimate me at your peril. In that instant, memories of betrayal, ridicule, and silent struggles flashed behind her eyes. She remembered the whispers calling her weak, the doubting commanders, the civilians who refused to see beyond the uniform. All of it led here to this muddy, rain-soaked battlefield. And now she would show them exactly who she was. Then a gunshot cracked through the storm. Instincts kicked in, faster than thought, faster than fear. Her hands, trained through years of blood and fire, moved with precision, stabilizing the private and scanning the shadows for the unseen enemy. Soldiers who had laughed moments before now looked to her for guidance, hearts racing, realizing the truth. The nurse wasn't just a nurse. And something bigger, something terrifyingly competent had just arrived. The chapter ends as she rises slowly, rain dripping from her dark hair, eyes burning, and steps toward the looming threat. Every soldier in that courtyard knew, without a word, that the rules had changed, and the woman they had dismissed was now the only shield between them and chaos. Before the rain and mud, before soldiers underestimated her, there was a young woman named Ilara Voss, standing in the freezing mountains of northern Alaska. Her breath fogged the air as she crouched behind jagged rocks, rifle in hand, her fingers numb but steady. Only 22, yet she carried the weight of missions most seasoned soldiers would never see. Her body bore scars and burns, her mind sharper than any blade. The tattoo, now shocking to the base, was earned in this crucible. Nights crawling through snow, ambush drills, life and death extractions in silence. Her instructors had laughed the first time she arrived in their grueling training camp, a tiny frame in a sea of hardened warriors. "You're a nurse," one had sneered. "Go back to bandages." Ilara had smiled quietly, no anger in her face, just the calm resolve that would later terrify entire battalions. She had endured the mocking, the endless tests of endurance, because she carried a mission inside her. A mission to prove that strength was not measured by size, but by will, skill, and heart. She remembered the night she earned her Special Forces tattoo. It was late, the wind howling over frozen cliffs, and her team had been pinned down for hours by enemy fire. Ilara moved alone through the darkness, neutralizing threats, evacuating the wounded, guiding her unit out without a single casualty. When she returned, frostbitten and bloody, her commander pressed a small, intricate symbol into her palm. "You've earned it," he said. That tattoo was more than ink. It was a badge of survival, a silent oath that she could walk where others would die. Yet no one outside her circle knew this story. Civilians, new soldiers, even some officers believed she was only a nurse, a healer, gentle and soft. They didn't know the fire burning beneath her calm exterior. And that was exactly how she wanted it. In life or on the battlefield, surprise was power. Now, years later, standing in the muddy courtyard at Kestrel Base, Ilara felt that same calm resolve return. She was back in another battlefield, a different war, but the stakes were the same. Protect the weak, confront danger, and let no one see her flinch. She scanned the faces around her, skeptical soldiers, commanding officers, a world that doubted her. Their ignorance was an advantage, and she would use it ruthlessly. That a sudden crack of thunder shook the base, and the shadow she had noticed earlier shifted again. Her pulse quickened. The storm was not just in the sky. Danger lurked in every corner, and only she seemed to see it coming. The metallic glint in the shadows was no trick of the rain. Ilara's eyes, trained for years to notice the smallest anomaly, caught the flash of a sniper's scope perched atop the supply warehouse. Time slowed. Soldiers nearby remained oblivious, fumbling with radios, arguing over the sudden storm. She didn't hesitate. With a single, fluid motion, Ilara dropped low, rolling across the slick mud, and pulled a compact rifle from her satchel. Every muscle remembered the countless drills, the cold nights, the silent extractions. Her aim was precise, unerring. She was not just a nurse. One shot rang out, echoing across the base. The sniper flinched, then retreated, realizing the hunter was far more dangerous than they anticipated. The courtyard erupted into chaos. Soldiers shouted commands, scrambling for cover, but Ilara moved calmly among them. She reached the injured private from earlier, checking his vitals with clinical precision while her other hand scanned for threats. Every movement was deliberate, calculated. A young medic whispered, awe-stricken, She's a ghost." Memories of Afghanistan and shadowed Middle Eastern alleyways flickered behind her eyes. Night raids, ambushes, the faces of those she couldn't save. That haunted calm, the balance between fury and control, defined her. And now it saved lives again. Officers arrived, faces pale, questioning her audacity. "Who authorized?" one began. But the tattoo on her forearm, partially revealed now, silenced him. Recognition passed through the ranks like wildfire. The emblem of her Special Forces unit wasn't just ink. It was a warning, a declaration, a record of deadly skill. Commands faltered. Soldiers straightened instinctively, a mix of fear and respect washing over them. Ilara's jaw tightened. She didn't need authority. She had her own rules, forged in fire. The storm intensified, rain blurring vision, wind whipping debris through the courtyard. Yet she moved like a shadow, positioning herself to shield the wounded. Her calm was magnetic. Even the most panicked soldiers found themselves following her instinctively. Then another shadow, a different one, shifted behind the supply tents. She noticed it instantly. A second team had infiltrated the base, more coordinated, more dangerous than the lone sniper. Ilara's pulse remained steady, but adrenaline surged beneath her skin. She motioned silently to the private to stay low, then rose, exposing herself as the first line of defense. Every soldier watched, frozen, understanding fully now. The nurse they had dismissed was the deadliest weapon on the base. And for the first time they realized the danger wasn't just outside, they had underestimated the storm inside. As rain pelted the courtyard, Ilara's mind briefly shifted back to a quieter, colder night in the deserts of Syria. She had been on a mission with a small Special Forces team, tasked with extracting civilians trapped in hostile territory. Among them was a boy no older than 10, clutching his mother's hand, wide-eyed and terrified. Ilara had taken him under her wing, whispering calm reassurances while bullets tore through the air around them. She carried him on her back through narrow alleys and collapsed buildings, her tattoo hidden beneath rolled sleeves, unseen and unrecognized. That boy, now a young man, was part of the infiltrating team at Kestrel Base. Recognition had sparked instantly when she glimpsed the shadows. He had survived because she had saved him once, and now, unknowingly, he stood on the opposite side of the gun. A pang of regret mixed with resolve surged through her. She couldn't falter. Past compassion could not compromise present duty. Back in the courtyard, the intruders advanced cautiously, their eyes scanning for weaknesses. Ilara adjusted her stance, breathing steady, muscles coiled like springs. She signaled to a group of soldiers hiding behind crates, directing them silently. The young medic, trembling, followed her every move, awe and fear etched on his face. How does she know what to do?" he whispered under his breath. Ilara's calm gaze met his, and without a word, he understood. Trust her or fail. Her hands moved with fluid precision, loading magazines, checking angles, calculating trajectories. She remembered the countless nights training for these exact scenarios: hostage extractions, ambushes, sniper suppression, improvised defense. Every scar on her body, every burn mark, every sleepless night in enemy territory had led to this storm-soaked moment. The infiltrating team hesitated. Something about her presence unnerved them. Perhaps it was the way her eyes never wavered, the tattoo partially visible, or the unspoken authority in her posture. One of the intruders, a taller man with a hardened face, tensed visibly, glancing at the emblem and swallowing hard. Recognition dawned in his eyes, and the subtle shift changed everything. Ilara's pulse remained steady, but the emotional weight of the connection pressed down. This wasn't just a battle to defend the base, it was a collision of past and present, of lives once saved now threatening her team. Every heartbeat carried the memory of survival, every breath a promise that no one under her protection would be harmed. She took a silent step forward, letting the rain wash over her, her mind sharpening into focus. The courtyard, chaotic moments ago, felt almost still now. The intruders had not fired yet, because the nurse they underestimated had become a ghost they could neither ignore nor confront lightly. Rain lashed the courtyard, soaking uniforms and mud alike, as the leader of the infiltrators froze mid-step. Recognition flared in his eyes, the ghost of a memory from years ago surfacing too sharply to ignore. Ilara's gaze locked onto him. The boy she had once carried through the alleys of war was now a man with a gun pointed toward her team. His hesitation was brief. He had grown up in conflict, yet the imprint of her past protection lingered. "Drop it," Ilara's voice cut through the storm, steady, commanding. Not a plea. A command. Her tattoo glimmered under the rain, a silent declaration of authority and lethal skill. The intruders exchanged confused glances. Who was this nurse? How could someone so seemingly gentle radiate this deadly certainty? Soldiers' hands trembled on rifles. Adrenaline surged like a tidal wave through the base. Memories of that night in Syria, the collapsing buildings, the terrified child on her back, the quiet promise that she would protect him, pushed through her. But she couldn't let sentiment weaken her. "You don't have to do this," she said, her voice low but edged with steel. "Walk away. Protect the lives you swore to guard." Her words were weighted, carrying authority forged through fire, experience, and heartbreak. The intruder faltered. A subtle shift in the wind and rain masked the whisper of her team moving into cover. Ilara's eyes scanned the battlefield, noting every crate, shadow, and doorway. She could neutralize threats in silence, but her goal wasn't just survival. It was control, preservation of life, and ensuring that none of her soldiers would fall today. A sudden crack, a shot fired too close, snapped everyone to action. Ilara moved like water, crouching, spinning, taking precise shots to disarm without lethal intent. The courtyard became a choreography of violence and strategy. Soldiers moved as one, guided by the calm hurricane that was Ilara. Each maneuver, each glance, each command was seamless, almost cinematic, a display of the difference between training and instinct. The young man's eyes met hers again, fear, recognition, and confusion battling within. Memories of childhood safety clashed violently with the weapons in his hands. Slowly, trembling, he lowered his gun. A ripple of disbelief ran through both the infiltrators and her team. The nurse wasn't just a nurse. She was the force that had molded him, guided him, and now commanded him. Ilara exhaled slowly, but the battle was not yet over. The remaining intruders shifted, uncertainty etched on their faces. Every heartbeat carried tension. The storm raged on, but within that chaos, the soldiers finally understood one undeniable truth. The nurse who healed was also the soldier who conquered. The rain had turned the courtyard into a slick battlefield, mud clinging to boots, uniforms plastered against soaked bodies. Soldiers were tense, eyes darting to every shadow, every corner of the base. Ilara's senses, honed through years of Special Forces operations, picked up a subtle disturbance, the faint scrape of metal against concrete near the armory. Someone was moving, silent, deadly, unseen by all but her. Her pulse quickened, but her face remained calm, a mask of icy focus. She slipped into the shadows, moving like a shadow herself, eyes tracking every slight shift. The infiltrator was skilled, trained, cautious, precise. Yet every skill she had ever learned, every sleepless night crawling through enemy territory, sharpened her instincts. She anticipated his route before he reached the armory, steps soundless beneath the rain. Flashbacks of prior missions surged. Dark corridors, the hum of tension, the weight of responsibility pressing down. Every hostage saved, every ambush navigated, every comrade lost had trained her for this exact moment. She wasn't just protecting a base, she was protecting lives that trusted her implicitly, and the enemy underestimated her because of a simple nurse's coat. She crept closer, rifle raised, eyes narrowed. The infiltrator paused, sensing danger too late. Ilara moved like lightning, disarming him in a fluid motion, sending him sprawling to the wet concrete. Mud and rain plastered his uniform, and for the first time, fear replaced arrogance in his gaze. The tattoo on her arm gleamed as she knelt beside him, her voice soft but cutting through the storm. "It doesn't have to end like this. Step down or you'll regret it." The courtyard erupted behind her. Soldiers, inspired by her leadership, moved decisively, securing the perimeter, neutralizing other threats without hesitation. Her team had witnessed the truth now. The nurse they dismissed was a strategist, a protector, a soldier forged in combat. Respect, awe, and fear mixed on their faces. Her eyes met the young man, the one she had saved as a boy, now an infiltrator. Recognition sparked in his eyes again, and he hesitated, torn between loyalty to the men beside him and the debt of survival he owed her years ago. Slowly, trembling, he lowered his weapon. Relief washed over her briefly, but the storm wasn't over. She stood, the rain streaming down her hair, eyes scanning the perimeter. The threat was contained, but the emotional weight pressed heavily. Every victory came with echoes of the past, reminders of lives shaped by her choices, and the burden of responsibility she bore alone. The rain had slowed to a cold drizzle, but the tension on forward operating base Kestrel was thicker than ever. Soldiers moved cautiously, every glance over the shoulder, every footstep measured. Ilara's eyes, sharp and vigilant, scanned the perimeter. Something didn't feel right. Despite the recent neutralization of the infiltrators, a shadow lingered, a presence she hadn't yet located. Her mind flashed to prior missions, betrayals that had almost cost her team their lives. The betrayal she had seen once in a comrade's eyes, the silent deceit that had turned allies into enemies, she knew it could happen again. And then she saw it, a figure partially hidden behind the mess tent, moving with calculated precision. Unlike the others, this one wasn't panicking. He, or she, was waiting, watching, anticipating mistakes. Ilara's pulse remained steady, but every nerve in her body screamed caution. She whispered a quick order to the nearest soldiers, directing them into defensive positions without drawing attention. They moved like shadows themselves, awestruck by the calm authority she exuded. The young medic, wide-eyed and trembling, followed silently, realizing fully that the nurse was the battlefield's beating heart. Suddenly a whistle pierced the night. It was subtle but unmistakable, a signal that the remaining threat had allies, perhaps still hiding among the base's structures. Ilara's gaze narrowed, eyes locking onto the mess tent. Memories of past operations in hostile territory returned. The stealthy enemies, the silent assassins, the time she had had to act decisively before anyone else realized danger was imminent. She stepped forward, every motion deliberate, her coat clinging to her body in the wet. Rain dripped down her hair, mingling with sweat and mud. "Show yourself," she called, her voice calm but carrying authority that cut through the drizzle. The figure emerged slowly, an officer she had once trained with during joint missions, someone who had always resented her success. Recognition sparked on both sides. Surprise, anger, and a silent challenge passed between them in a heartbeat. A tense standoff erupted. Weapons raised, neither side willing to risk a single misstep. The soldiers froze, unsure whether to intervene or wait. The weight of past grudges, loyalty, and survival all collided in that brief, storm-soaked moment. Ilara's tattoo gleamed in the dim light, a silent warning. She was not the same person they once underestimated. She had endured, adapted, and survived far worse. The officer flinched, misjudging her resolve. In that split second, the battlefield shifted entirely. Ilara lunged, disarming him with a move perfected in countless missions, securing both him and the last infiltrator. The courtyard erupted into controlled chaos, soldiers following her commands without hesitation. The storm had broken, leaving the courtyard slick and glistening under the dim floodlights. Rain puddles reflected the tense faces of soldiers and the scattered debris of the previous firefight. Ilara crouched behind a crate, rifle ready, eyes scanning the base for the final threat she had sensed earlier. It wasn't just a mission now, it was personal. Every heartbeat carried the weight of past mistakes, lost comrades, and the lives she had vowed to protect. Her thoughts flashed to Afghanistan, to the night a mission had gone wrong. A teammate, betrayed by an ally they trusted, had fallen. Ilara had carried him through fire and chaos, only to watch him slip from her grasp in the end. The memory burned like fire under her skin. Every shadow in Kestrel Base's courtyard now seemed magnified, every movement suspicious. She had learned from betrayal. She would not fail again. A soft noise, a metallic scrape, drew her attention. Hidden in the shadows, a figure emerged. Her heart skipped a beat. Recognition came instantly. It was Lieutenant Cale Draven, a former commander she had trained under, the one who had once sabotaged her career out of jealousy. His eyes, cold and calculating, met hers. He had orchestrated the infiltration, hoping to embarrass her, undermine her authority, and reclaim a perceived superiority. Ilara's jaw tightened. She had grown stronger, sharper, and far more patient since those days. Her tattoo, partially revealed under her rolled-up sleeve, gleamed like a silent warning. Cale's lips curled into a smirk, but the arrogance faded when he saw the controlled fury in her eyes. He underestimated her again, and it would be his final mistake. The soldiers nearby held their breath, unsure whether to intervene. Elara moved forward slowly, calculating distance, angle, and opportunity. Every step was deliberate, a balance between strategy and instinct. Kale raised his weapon, but before he could fire, Elara's training and experience took over. She disarmed him with fluid precision, twisting the gun from his hands while maintaining control of her own rifle. Time seemed to slow. Rain dripped from her hair onto the muddy ground, mixing with the dust of battle. The tension was palpable. Kale was defeated not by brute force, but by strategy, calm, and the recognition that he had underestimated the woman he had tried to destroy. The soldiers watched in awe as Elara's quiet authority reshaped the battlefield entirely. The courtyard was silent now, the storm having eased into a faint drizzle, leaving mud clinging to boots and uniforms. But the tension was thicker than ever. Elara's eyes scanned the shadows, every sense alert. She knew the final challenge had arrived, the one she had anticipated but hoped to avoid. It wasn't just about skill, it was about confronting the past and protecting everyone under her command. A figure emerged from the edge of the base, a shadow moving with deliberate precision. Elara's pulse stayed steady, but her mind raced through contingency plans. Her soldiers looked to her for guidance, finally realizing that the nurse they had underestimated was their only shield. The intruder stepped into the dim light, revealing a man who had been orchestrating the attacks from the start. A rogue special forces operative, once a comrade, now consumed by jealousy and vengeance. "Elara," he spat, voice cold and sharp. "You shouldn't have come back. You weren't supposed to survive, to thrive. Now you've ruined everything." His weapon trembled slightly in his hands, betraying both anger and fear. Her jaw tightened, but her eyes remained calm, piercing. Memories of past missions, of comrades lost, of every challenge she had overcome, flooded her mind. She had endured betrayal, humiliation, and impossible odds, and she would endure this. Slowly, deliberately, she raised her rifle, not just as a weapon but as a symbol of authority, control, and survival. The rogue moved first, lunging with a trained aggression meant to intimidate and overpower. Elara anticipated every step, countering with fluid precision. The two moved in a deadly dance across the muddy courtyard, rain splashing around them. Each strike and maneuver told a story of skill, experience, and resolve. Soldiers watched in awe, unable to intervene as the nurse revealed herself fully as a warrior. Then came the critical moment. The rogue hesitated, caught between aggression and fear, realizing that Elara's calm was not weakness. She had trained in deserts, mountains, and urban chaos. She had survived impossible odds. She had earned her tattoo in blood and fire. With a swift, decisive move, she disarmed him completely, pressing her rifle firmly against his chest. Silence fell. Soldiers held their breath. The rogue, beaten and exhausted, finally dropped to his knees, understanding the truth he had tried to deny. The woman he underestimated was the most dangerous force on the base. Elara exhaled slowly, rain dripping down her face, eyes scanning the courtyard. Every soldier had witnessed the transformation. The nurse they had dismissed was now their protector, strategist, and leader. Respect and awe rippled through the ranks. The base was secure, her team safe, and the final threat neutralized. The morning sun broke through the clouds, casting a pale golden light across the muddy courtyard of forward operating base Kestrel. The rain had ceased, leaving the ground slick and shimmering, but the battlefield felt transformed. Soldiers moved with a quiet reverence, their eyes lingering on the woman who had reshaped their understanding of courage and authority. Elara stood tall, her coat damp, sleeves rolled to reveal the tattoo that had changed everything. She didn't boast, she simply allowed the truth of her presence to speak. The infiltrators were secured, disarmed, and awaiting transport, their arrogance replaced with reluctant respect. Even Lieutenant Kale Draven, defeated but alive, avoided her gaze. The young man she had saved as a boy now understood fully the meaning of her actions: protection, skill, and unwavering resolve. He lowered his head slightly, a silent acknowledgement of the debt he owed. Elara took a deep breath, surveying the base. Soldiers approached her cautiously, still awed, still unsure how to address someone who had simultaneously healed and led them through chaos. One young medic finally found his voice. I didn't believe it at first. But you saved us. All of us." His words were simple, yet they carried the weight of transformation. She nodded, a soft smile breaking through the exhaustion and mud-streaked face. "It wasn't just me," she said quietly. We survived because we trusted each other. Because you listened when it mattered. Her voice, calm but resolute, carried authority and humility in equal measure. The soldiers around her finally understood. Courage was not only in brute strength but in patience, intelligence, and the ability to inspire trust. As she walked through the base, the sun drying her hair, Ilara reflected on the journey that had brought her here. The missions, the betrayals, the sleepless nights, the lives she had saved, and the enemy she had disarmed without hesitation. Every scar, every tattoo, every hardship had shaped her into someone who could move through chaos and emerge not just alive but in command. For the first time in years she felt the weight of the past lift slightly. She had proven herself not through words but through action. Soldiers who once doubted her now followed her instinctively. The base, once a scene of near disaster, now felt secure, disciplined, and alive with quiet respect. Ilara's eyes drifted toward the horizon, where the sun touched the mountains beyond the base. The storm had passed. The battles of her past had shaped her. And the soldiers who had once underestimated the nurse now knew the truth. She was more than a healer. She was a force of nature, a guardian, and a warrior whose legacy would endure. And as the camera of memory, the viewer's mind, lingered on her tattoo glinting in the morning light, there was no doubt left. The woman they thought was just a nurse had become a legend in her own right.